like to know, I'd also like to know, just before I begin, were you able to go through the pre-work? Were you able to sort of just look through it, attempt it? Did you engage with it in any way? Would love to hear some responses, even if you can come off mute and let me know, it would be good. So if anybody wants to take a shot at just talking to me about if you happen to see the pre-work, if you engaged with it, what did you think about it? Was it simple? Was it complicated? Did you even receive a pre-work to begin with? Sarah, were you able to receive the pre-work? I don't know. The pre-work is Bhumika didn't receive it. Okay. Okay. I guess if you've sort of registered maybe later in the evening, you might have not received it. Anyone who's registered maybe by yesterday should have received an email with some pre-work in it. If anyone's here who's joined the call who registered yesterday. No? Okay. Okay, cool. Maybe there was a little bit of miss from our end, but let me then just quickly start the webinar then. I'm just going to share my screen. Sorry, I'm just going to just reset this. Yeah. Before we begin, I'm just going to have a small little icebreaker, and I would really want you guys to engage verbally or on chat, however you feel comfortable. So you're just going to see some photos pop up, and it's a very sort of basic question: who's better and why? I'm just going to give maybe about, let's say, 5-6 seconds for each photo. So you can start with this one. Who do you think is better between Rihanna and Doja Cat? Any music fans out there might be able to help me out with this one. Very simple question. Who do you think is better and why? Wasim says Rihanna. Wasim, it would be really nice to hear from you as to why you think she's better. If you can come off mute and let me know, and what are you basing this on? Or Sagar, or Sai Kumar, any one of you, if you could come off mute and just engage with everyone as to why you think Rihanna is better. Or you could let me know in chat too. I mean,
something.
Yeah, sure.
Sir, this organization, you're working for a startup.
Well, I'm currently working with Skillaroo. Yes, Sagar.
So what is Skillaroo?
We'll probably cover that in the webinar. So if you could just, I mean, we'll cover that in the webinar anyway. So if you could just allow me to reach there, we'll just cover it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just heard some of her songs. Okay. Thank you, Wasim. So maybe Wasif, it's more of a personal choice with you. I'll move on to the next one. So a little bit more maybe vintage music fans. Who do you think is better between the Beatles and, if I'm not wrong, that's Coldplay? So same thing. Who do you think is better and why? So if you could just engage in chat. Asif says no idea. Okay. No worries, Asif. That's totally fine. Okay, so I mean, maybe we could do an interesting experiment over here. How many of you haven't heard of the Beatles before? If you could maybe raise your hand. Komal says Beatles is better. Okay. Okay. Well, we have another Beatles fan. I think one person hadn't heard of Beatles before. I've heard about them though. Okay, but Receive doesn't. Coldplay, Bhumika, thank you, but that's a personal preference. Okay. Never heard about them. That's okay, Sagar. That's not an issue. Just a little bit of old, I think 1970s maybe music. But thank you guys. I feel like a lot of personal choice, especially with music. So the last one before we move to a different category. I might be a bit old for this, but my students definitely seem to enjoy K-pop. So who do you think is better between BTS and Chris Martin? Masif says no BTS. Okay. Sagar likes BTS. Okay. So it would be great to know why you're making these choices. Is it, you could also let me know in chat if it's based on personal choice. Bhumika says love them both equally. Okay. Is it more of the type of music, personal choice, just something that you love listening to? Personal choice. Okay. Thank you, Komal. Okay. So I'm hoping this might get a lot more debate in the chat. So this was the last one before we move on to the session. Who do you think is better between Dhoni and Kohli? You could probably sort of take anything. Wasifa's instant over there. Dhoni. Okay. Dhoni. Okay. A lot of Dhoni fans. No comparison. Okay, Saurabh. Both. Arjun, I'm not sure why you said stop. If you could elaborate, maybe. Okay, don't compare. Okay. I mean, this is more to, I mean, this is just to sort of break the ice with the audience. But I hope, I mean, so especially when it comes to sports or even with music, a lot of us do make those comparisons and personal choices. I think sports probably is a wider debate of numbers and, trophies and succession rates and all those things come into play. Even when you're having like increasing debates between who's better with Rihanna, who's achieved more between Rihanna or BTS for that matter, you bring in awards and all that into play. So with maybe that sort of lens, I'd just like to start the session, and I'd like to keep the engagement in chat going. My first question to the audience today is, what do you think is data? When you hear the word data, what sort of images pop into your head? Okay, Ankit says information. Okay. Bhumika says stats and information. Okay. Huge amount of information, collection of information. Okay. Okay. So at least from this, I understand that, it's sort of like some version of information. And if you numbers and information, okay, some version of information again. And if data is a lot of information given to you, then what would be data-driven decisions? And how often do you make them? Again, a question to the audience. What would be, okay, Saurabh says frequently. Okay, thanks, Saurabh. Okay, Kumar says often. Decisions based on that information, like comparisons between available options. Yeah, Bhumika, thank you. It's mostly a personal choice. Decisions that is based upon data we have collected. Often, okay. So can you think of something, like we might do in everyday life that we might use data for? Choosing food-based ratings, picking up stocks, etc. Okay, so that's great examples. So I mean, at the end of the day, data, as all of you said rightly, is a collection of information presented to you, and information can be in any form. It could be numbers, it could be structured, it could be unstructured, it could be predictive, it could be prescriptive. We'll cover all those meanings of data in further ones. And how often do you make them? As again, rightly put by all of you guys. We make them quite often enough. And, including everyday life, from the sort of chai you drink to the sort of to when to wash your clothes, to sort of where do you want to go, what restaurant you want to pick. Everything in life is driven by data, right? And yeah, well, thanks, Sagar. Everything is data. So, and data can be in interesting formats. Something like this is what is often what people think data looks like. You looking at followers on social media, how much you're growing, or sort of, you could also have infographics with data, which is now a big thing for most companies to sort of present how their year went by. I'm sure most of you using Swiggy, Dunzo, or any of those startups would get their end of the year infographic data of which city orders the most biryani, which city orders the most type of food, cuisine, all those things. Something like this as well, because as YouTube is a very popular format, this I think was collected by inside a agency that works with this sort of data, where they've collected the most popular YouTuber in every country. So their channels is based on that insight would be based on number of followers, growth rate, engagement, how often their YouTube videos are viewed, etc. Right? So it's just how usually we see data, but of course, like all of you put it, everything is data, and we use data driven decisions on an everyday basis. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard this word, big data. It's the word in data analytics. It's something that all of us want to know. It seems like a mystery. Largely, if you want to break it down, it's just different types of data. It could, of course, be large format data, something that you would do on an app, data in terabyte or more. Yeah. So something that you would do on an app like a Swiggy or Dunzo. Every screen that you interact with is monitored on Swiggy's end to sort of figure out customer engagement, user engagement, to figure out where we can get that sort of reduce dropout rates or increase order rates. Continuous data, something that you would come across in Spotify, where your playlists are dynamically changed depending on the mood, depending on what you look for, depending on what you search for, depending on your search history, depending on what you've been listening for the last hour. You, of course, have unstructured data. This is something that we are all used to on social media, all comments, Zomato reviews. Yeah, Sagar, X server. Yeah, data from server as well. I'm not sure if that's what you meant. Sorry, from just a break in flow, but example. Okay, yeah, sorry. Server data is continuous data. Yes. Unstructured data, like tweets, comments, reviews, anything that's unstructured on a website, app, or anything. You have, of course, dynamic data, which is largely your Instagram, Facebook, newsfeed, hashtags, clicks, all these things. Instagram obviously is not just a picture-based platform. There's a lot of data that goes into sort of what your profile page looks like, what do you see, what ads do you see, what newsfeed do you see, whose profile do you see. All these things is just structured, and it's very dynamic, and it changes for everybody. There's real-time data. Like we were talking, I think Ankit was talking about predicting scores. So the real time, especially run rates, especially during sports matches that you see saying at 6 overs, this team was this at this run rate, this team has this run rate, they need to hit this. In football, it's usually that stock market also. Yeah, great example. In football also, you see like when Ronaldo scores in first half, this team always wins, or when Messi scores in the second half, he has a more success rate of scoring at the 90th minute than throughout the match. There's suggestive data, obviously, like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Amazon, or any e-commerce website based on your history of what you've bought or what you've interacted with. But big data as such is just always goes back to this. Whatever data it is, it always goes back to this. It's just simple decisions based that you make based on the actions taken by the user or based on the actions that you've taken and the proof that you have, right? So that's breaking it down into like as generalist view as possible. So we come to then analytics. That's what we do with a data set. We analyze it. So according to Gartner, there are three sort of main categories that you can divide analytics to, which is hindsight, insight, and foresight. Hindsight is something that you look at on a later on stage. It's basically like you've run a campaign, for example, you've run a marketing campaign, you've done something, you've taken a decision, and you check on what happened in that decision and why did it happen. Why did it happen and what will happen also constitutes of insight, where you can add some insights. Like for example, based on my history of working with Dunzo, we try and figure out dropout rates of users. Why did this user drop out? What were his last 3 tasks? Was it lowly rated? Did he have some issues with his last 3 tasks? What is his frequency of his, what frequency was he raising tasks in before he dropped out? What happened? Was there any issues? Did he raise any customer tickets? Was it not solved? So you look at all these things and figure out why this person dropped out. What will happen is also another type of insight that you can offer usually as a business or a data analyst to your team that you would be working in. For example, you can always predict based on history or demographic or anything like that, saying what, again, I'm relating this to Dunzo. What would be the first task this user would raise, or when would he raise the next task? Let's say, user raises a grocery task with a frequency of 7 days. So then I can always predict saying that, hey, this person's missed his grocery task for this week. So maybe I can make him raise a task by giving him an offer. Like I'll give him 10% off on groceries if you raise it today. So the likelihood of user behavior repeating is quite, predictive. So I'm just going to say that to get him to raise a task, I'll give him 10% this thing. So I might get him back on the app, or I might get him to raise a task. And of course, doing something to get something done, like for example, even avoiding a drop, or even having marketing campaigns to get in more users, or to launch a product or to launch a feature, comes under foresight, which is basically prescriptive analytics. So, I mean, of course, there are various tools to sort of do this, right? The basics of any sort of analytics starts with sorting your information. I think for any business or data analyst, your sort of go-to tool is always going to be MS Excel and spreadsheets. Depending on the organization you work, of course, Excel is probably widely recognized, but some startups also work with spreadsheets because it's collaborative. It's more collaborative than Excel. So yeah, we try and sort information to maybe visually recognize some patterns. We see what our data is made up of, and what comparisons or what sort of assumptions we can make visually itself, and what sort of trends are we seeing, what can be the reasons for those trends. And then we sort of sit and go into deeper analysis more, where you're sort of using your formulas, pivot tables, VLOOKUPs to sort of figure out where you go from this data set that you have. At this point, maybe I'd just like to stop and sort of figure out where the audience is. The next set of slides is just going to be hopefully the pre-work that you should have engaged with, but maybe for some reason you didn't receive the email. So it's just going to be a case study. So what I'd just like to know from you guys is, would you like to work with me simultaneously? It's a very simple sheet that I have. Maybe, Pratik, if you have the link to that sheet, maybe you can send it on chat for everybody.
Yeah, give me a second.
Yeah. So if anyone's interested, you could do it simultaneously with me on a Google Sheet. This can be done on a Google Sheet. You don't need Microsoft Excel to sort of do this. But if you're not able to do it, along with me, you could always just look at my screen. Just thanks, Pratik, for sending the link. You could just sort of look at my screen and just maybe note down some questions that are popping up in your head, and I'd be happy to answer them. So what the pre-work was largely was a case study where you are a business analyst in this startup called Manned Groove, and your CEO has basically gotten a data set from one of his competitors, and he'd just like you to analyze and figure out direction of what you could do with these influencers, right? So there's some questions that he'd like you to answer. That's in the next slide. So maybe I can just stop here for 2 minutes. Everybody can just open this sheet and just post some questions that is coming up straight away to you when you look at this sheet. Maybe you're seeing some patterns, some questions, some thing that's popping in your head, and you can just post them on chat before we actually move to the questions. I'll also open the sheet on my screen as well. Just so we'd love to hear anything that the audience would like to ask or engage right now. These are campaigns posted on social networking sites. These are, Sagar, these are largely posts maybe from social networking sites and what they're from some influencers and what are their performance on those posts or different type of media that are on social networking sites. Okay. Aniket, could you maybe elaborate a little bit? What do you mean by doing marketing through apps? Would love to hear from everybody else. So the sheet would be for maybe someone who's working in a digital marketing team. And this is basically a study of influencers in different spaces that the brand Unmanned Groove would like to engage with. They aren't advertising. Unmanned Groove is not advertised anything. These are the, how do I say? These are the demographics, or these are the infographics of a post by an influencer in that category that Unmanned Grow would like to encourage engage with. So if there is someone who's doing a beauty post, a post, that person posting on Facebook on this day got him so many results, got him or her so much reach, got so many link clicks, this much amount was spent by this by the company who engaged this influencer to get that, so on and so forth. Yeah. As Aniket's putting, using social media, we can connect products to customers. Yeah. So are there anything that's popping to your head straight away, or would you like to maybe engage with the questions and then we can come back to the sheet? Okay. Sagar says question. So maybe we can take one question and we'll just see, we'll just try and I'm just gonna reduce this back to 90%. And we'll just, go back to the sheet and see what we can do from it, right? So Pankur Dwariku wants to know, given the reach and frequency, what's the total impression per activity? So what he's trying to say over here, I mean, this is largely as maybe if anybody here is in final year and would like to apply for any data analytics job, you would get this something like this as a sheet, right? And they would like to know your technical knowledge of Excel or Sheets or any version of analytics that way, where they would give you the sheet and say, hey, we've given you these set of questions, and we'd like you to answer these questions from this data set and send it out to us. And if you are impressed with your sort of work, we'll engage with you further in further rounds. And this is sort of the basic process that any data analytics interview or any data analytics job application would follow. So we've gotten this sheet now. All of us have applied to this job with Pankur Dwariku. We've gotten this sheet, and Pankur Dwariku has asked us to find what is total impressions per activity. In social media, impression is basically, how many impressions have you made on everybody's story feed or whatever? How many feed stories, etc. has our ad appeared in? So if you go back to the sheet now, we have a column called impressions, and we have a column called reach, and we have a column called frequency, and we have to find impressions. So within the question itself, there is a clue, right? So given the reach and frequency, what is the total number of impressions per activity? So what do you think would be the answer to this question? Anybody? So I would love to cover, like a lot of concepts. So given the lack of time, I just want to push through quickly. So if you could really engage quickly, so we can just cover a little bit more advanced concepts like pivot table. I wouldn't want to miss that as a time constraint. So, okay, let me put it this way. Are you able to understand what you need to do for the question firstly? We're supposed to multiply the reach by frequency. Close Bhumika. Columns, the sort of columns are correct, but just the operation is wrong. We'd have to divide, actually, yeah, we'd have to multiply, sorry, you're right. My confusion at my end. We're supposed to multiply reach by frequency. Also, just for me to understand, how many of you are proficient, or let's say know basics of Excel quite well, as opposed to how many of you are more novice in Excel and Sheets, that you would like me to sort of take you through operations as well? But I will sort of answer this question. Bhumika was right. You were supposed to multiply reach and frequency, so you get impressions. Of course, Sheets has this wonderful function of autofill. If I enter a formula over here, it just gives me the ability to autofill it. So it sort of flows through all my columns. In Excel, we just have to drag it down like so. You will get a different sort of cursor over here, and you drag it down like that, and that sort of pulls down the formula in Excel. But yeah, largely the answer to the first question was that you're supposed to multiply reach versus frequency. So if somebody would like to help me with the second answer, what has been our cost for every 1,000 people reached? So we have over here a column. I think if I go back to the shoot, right? So we have CPC, which is cost per click, and we have cost per 1,000 people reached, right? So what do you think cost per 1,000 people reached could be? Would love to hear all you get from all of you. What are you thinking? Are you stuck somewhere? Are you not able to understand what I'm trying to say? Amount by reach into 100. Yeah, perfect. Total cost divided by reach multiplied by 1,000. Yeah, right. So largely that total cost divided by reach multiplied by 1,000. I'm just gonna just fill up the formulas in this. Sorry, fill up the formulas in this sheet. So, sorry, just give me 1 minute. Yes. So we basically are able to answer these questions. These are simple maths questions with any Excel sheet. So the idea of it is just to understand what is the ask over here, given how many actual clicks happen, what is the cost per click. So for example, that is just, so that is just your amount spent divided by link clicks that people got. So that's your cost per click. So you can sort of just put those formulas in. These are very basic operations. What I would like to get to is pivot tables. And maybe these formulas. If anybody is knowledgeable in Excel, maybe you could help me solve this one. So over here, it says in the next slide, we have a couple of more questions. It says over here, what day of the week do we have the highest reach and lowest cost to acquire, right? So we don't seem to have day of the week data from this. We seem to have some dates over here. We have this date column, which is giving us some dates. If any, would somebody like to help me with what we can do? How do we extract day of the week from this column? Or how do we get these information basically? Because we can see over here, we have some questions that are asking us about, that are asking us about days of the week, months, weekdays, weekends. There's a lot of diagnostic questions that have been asked for us related to dates. And I'm just curious on how do we sort of get that data out. Does anybody know that to excel to that level yet? Would you like to maybe try with some formulas that you know? Would love to hear. Never used Excel. Okay, Sagar. Maybe I could sort of explain this to everybody if you're sort of struggling with this. So Excel has this function where I can basically get any data from a date, right? So this particular function, text of C2, C2 is where my date is stored. Text of C2 in day format gives me Tuesday. If I just put 3 days, it gives me this short form. If I put 4 Ds, it gives me the full listing. So that is day of the week, right? And then Sagar, if I just drag this down, it sort of applies the formula to all the rows, right? So C2 just moves down to C3, and it applies the same formula to C, just to get the day out from that date. I'm just gonna extend this out to our sheet. Sorry. So I've pulled out day of the week. Now the next column is asking me to pull out month. So given that, the formula we used here was the column sort of where the date was posted in, and D for day, what do you think might be the formula to drag the month out from that date? So we use this formula to drag the day out. What do you think we need? Which formula do you think we might need to use to drag the month out? Yep. A lot of you seem to have gotten it MMMM for month instead of DDDD. So that's the formula that's over here, MMMM. So like, day, if I just put in 3 over here, I get a short form. And if I put in 4, you get the full version, full of the month. And, you could use whatever you're more comfortable with. Either way works. Just gonna, what I'm doing here is just copying the formula and pasting it in my Google Sheets. It would work in Excel as well. To sort of select all the rows, I'm using Control Shift down, Control Shift up, or Command Shift down, Command Shift up if you're on a Mac, Control Shift up or down if you're on Windows. And this is just Control C, Control V. So we need to figure out, in one of the questions, what it asked me to do was we need to figure out if it's when we are performing better. Are we performing better on a weekday or are we performing better on a weekend? To sort of reach that, what I've done is I've applied another formula where what I've done is asked Excel to tell me if this is a weekday or a weekend, right? So, I mean, what the number of day it is. So Tuesday is obviously second day of the week. If you come to Wednesday, that would be third day of the week. So I'm just gonna post this to the entire data set, and you'll see what I mean. So I've just asked Excel to sort of let me know what number of day of the week it is. So like Tuesday is day number 2, Saturday is day number 6, Thursday is day number 4, Tuesday is day number 2, Monday is day number 1, Sunday is day number 7. So what you can do, there's this function called Weekday, and you can look it up. You can get the guide on Excel for it or Google Sheets. It just sort of gives you the weekday according to the format that you pick. There are different formats. I think if I pick one, then it would consider Sunday to be day number 1, and it would go from there. But since we want weekdays and weekends, I've just picked the second format where it would pick Monday as day number 1 and Saturday, Sunday as 6 and 7. And post that. So now this is the logic here, right? So I've gotten days of the week over here. It tells me which day it is. If you would want to sort of then classify weekday or weekend, how would you do it? So I have this column over here that tells me if this is day number 1 of the week, day number 2 of the week, day number 3 of the week. I need to classify what is weekday and what is weekend. What would you do? Right? I mean, whatever is coming to your head. 6 and 7 is weekend, and the rest of the days are weekdays, says Komal. Perfect, Komal. Thank you. Drag down weekday. Yeah, I've applied a formula over here. I will drag that down, but I'm just trying to understand what formula would you apply. Starting from 1, that is Monday, right, Sagar? So what you're saying, Sagar, if it's 1, then say it's Monday, which is a weekday, right? So anybody from a CS background should be able to help me out with this one. What would be the best sort of loop that I can apply to this? Anybody in the audience that's from a CS background? I think some of you did say you were from a CS background, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, I do have some people from a CS background. Sagar, Aniket. We can initialize 1 to Monday. That we've already done with this function. For loop till 7. Okay. for loop. Okay. We've already done the initialization, so you don't need to worry about that. For loop, I would probably use for initialization. I am now looking to classify it as a weekday or weekend. So initialization is done. Look, I'm looking to classify it as a weekday or weekend. Okay. So, I mean, I think Komal did put it already. 6 and 7 is weekend and the rest of it is weekday. So what I would do is basically use an if else loop or an if else formula. Yeah, pretty much that. So in Excel, as my manager would put it, Excel is like a 5-year-old kid. So what I've told Excel over here is if the value in this cell is greater than 5, then classify it as weekend, else classify it as weekday, right? So if it's less than 5, then classify it as weekday. So what I just sort of then copy this, what I always do with the rest of my columns, copy this formula down to my entire data set. I just post it here and I get the classification of weekday, weekday, weekend. So you can test a few if you want. So you got 2 over here, it's a Tuesday, weekday. You've got Saturday over here, which is a weekend. So that's correct. You've got Sunday over here, which is also a weekend. So we've now got, sort of the data in the format that we would like to sort of answer these more deeper, insightful questions, where it says, what are we better on? Are we better on Instagram or Facebook? What works for us? Do stories get us better reach? Do feeds get us better reach? Or do explore gets us the best reach to the audience that we want to reach? When do we have the highest reach? What day of the week do we have the highest reach? What are our months looking like? Are people not looking at social media on a particular month? Is it dropping down? Blah, blah, blah. All these things would be something as a data or a business analyst you would be looking at. So the best tool that you would have as a data analyst with Excel is something called pivot tables. So how do you apply a pivot table? You take any data set, select all your data that you want. Like I said, to select data or a lot of columns or rows at one shot, you just do shift to the side or command shift down and just select your entire data set. Control shift down if you're using a Windows laptop. Go into insert. You have this function over here called pivot tables. You just click on pivot table and it applies this, right? Post that, you can sort of answer a lot of questions that Pankur Variku has asked over here. Dwariku, I'm sorry. Pankur Dwariku has asked over here. He wants to know which is performing better. Is it Facebook or Instagram? So as you can see from our data set, we have Facebook or Instagram in this column called platform. So what I'm going to do is basically, post this column over here, platform, in my row. I'm just going to get this, right? I'm going to get Facebook or Instagram. And then what I'm going to do is, for example, he's asked me over here, what works better for us, stories, feeds, or explore? I'd like to ask the audience, how do you classify what works better? How do you sort of make this distinction that stories are working better, feed is working better, or explore is working better? What is the metric that you would use to classify what is working better? Number of views. Okay. Vasif says number of views. So Vasif, I'm just going to put impressions over here in values, right? And I don't want sum because that's not a good metric to measure. I'm just going to measure average. What is the average view on Facebook and Instagram for a post? So it seems like impressions wise, Instagram is doing better. Reach. Okay. So we have reach. I'm also going to put that in values then. And, just going to change my value again over here. I'm just going to put average again. So it seems like that way though, Facebook seems to have better reach. So is there any other metrics that you'd like to measure to figure out what is doing better, Facebook or Instagram? Of course, now the question here was, what is doing better in terms of stories, feed, or explore, right? So we need to measure it against those. So what I'm going to also do, if you look at this data set, stories feed is in this column called placement. So I'm just going to go back to my pivot table. I'm going to put placement in filters. Okay. And what I'm then, for example, if you just want to, I'm just going to clear this. I'm just going to see feed. And that just gives me what the feed looks like. And it seems like Instagram does much better than Facebook in feed, because I have like about average 1 million impressions over here. And if I want to look at stories, Facebook seems to be doing better. And if I want to look at explore, that's doing better. And of course, you can arrange this pivot table to sort of, your convenience. I put stories and filter. What I can also do is do the reverse. I can put placement down in rows, right? And put reach over here in values. So it gives me that. And I can put platform in filter. So it gives me which works better, Facebook. These are, so Facebook doesn't even have an explore feature over there. It's already, there you go. And then I can put it on Instagram. I have all three features. So over here. So maybe we could get back to our manager or Pankur Dwariku that Instagram as a platform is doing better for us, right? So another question over here that sort of says, which day of the week do we have the highest reach? And break it down by Instagram and Facebook, right? So would anybody like to help me arrange that pivot table that way? Which day of the week do we have higher reach? And break it down by Facebook or Instagram. I'm just gonna remove my pivot table. So we start off from blank, and one of you can help me out. What sort of data do you need in this pivot table to make that distinction? Okay, clicks. Where would you put this click, Sagar? Would you put it on values, columns, rows, filters? Values. Okay. So let me just bring in clicks. Okay. So maybe not. So because here the question as such is asking me highest reach, right? So it's already asking me the attribute that I'd like to measure. It's asking me reach. So I'd like to bring reach to down to values. I could also bring clicks down to compare, but because it's asking me reach in particular, I'd like to bring reach down to values. And what else would I need? Is this giving me the answer for the question? I have this number over here that just says 186,906. Is that sort of helping me with this answer? Days of the week will go under rows. Okay, perfect. I'm just going to run day of the week. We'll go under rows. So I'll just put that in rows. Okay. And platform and filters. Perfect. So we've just broken down a question, which maybe seemed a bit complicated at first, but very easy for us to find out using pivot tables, right? So we have this entire thing over here. We can calculate through highest cost per day in a week. Yeah, we could do that as well. We could bring in CPC as well, cost per click, into values, and just make that average cost per click. So that also gives you this thing. So because we have platform over here, I can just, I'm just going to remove these totals. I'm just going to just maybe select Facebook. That gives me Facebook's reach and this thing over the week. And I'm going to select Instagram. It gives me Instagram's this thing. Of course, as any data analyst would probably do next, what I can do is just take up this and say, hey, you know what? I'd like to impress my manager. I'm just going to plot a chart. And this is Instagram's reach over the week. And then I'm just going to change my filter to bring in Facebook. And then I'm just going to plot that chart. And it looks like this. I haven't plotted it, but you can always plot both of it, or you could plot both of it together actually with a stacked chart. And that would basically be what you would present to your manager as an answer to this question that he's asked you. I'd like to move on and just talk about Skillaroo for a bit. I think, Sagar, this was your question. So I work for Skillaroo, where we basically offer you this project as an experience. You would be working on your own on a self-study basis with enough resources where you would be able to attempt this project on your own in an immersive exercise to learn Excel or to learn data analytics and present a proper visualized dashboard with all the metrics that these questions have asked you through a project. And you would basically have an entry to data analytics. I think one of you in the audience told me that you would like to understand where to start off in a data, with data analytics, or quite interested in data analytics, but you're not unsure of where to start. And that could be a lot of us, especially when we're beginning our careers. So Skillaroo as a platform gives you an entryway or a way to test yourself out through virtual projects. Like, hey, if I want to be a data analyst, what are the skills that I would require? We looked at Excel. Of course, there's various tools that you need as a data analyst. You need Tableau or Power BI for visualizations. You can always do it on Excel, but most startups or most companies move to Tableau or Power BI eventually. So that's what you would use. You would also use maybe other versions of infographics. There's obviously a lot of versions where you can present infographics. You would also use maybe SQL at some point of time to get your data out from a database, because for example, Swiggy or Dunzo as such would store their data, their user generated data on a database. You as a data analyst would extract that data using SQL, using queries, and then use Power BI or Tableau to visualize that data in charts. I'm just going to cover charts quickly next, but that's largely about Skillaroo. We also have other offerings in Skillaroo where you could maybe take up a test that would help you discover what path or what career path is right for you. Let's say you end up with data analyst as the career path. You can then take up projects on data analytics and get better. You can also get internships on data analytics once you've completed those projects. And you can also get mentors who can mentor you through your career for a potential data analyst career. These mentors are industry experts. They have a lot of experience, and they also offer you a networking opportunity where you can sort of meet and be introduced to a LinkedIn community of data analysts through Skillaroo. You will get the website. Let me just post maybe, Pratik, maybe you can post the WordPress site on the chat and people can sort of look through it once this call is over. I just like to move on and in this thing of time. So once you've sort of analyzed your data, once you've sort of had all the answers to Pankur Variku's questions, you have to present them likely in a chart, right? And since we were working on Excel, I just sort of lined up the different type of charts in Excel. So you have all these, largely you have all these charts. These, I think, potentially cover 99% of charts on Excel or sheets. So you have your pie chart, your bar chart, your column chart, line chart, area, donut, which is just another version of pie chart. Bubble chart, spider and radar is something new that Excel's come up with. You have stacked bar chart, comparison charts, and gauges. So again, new charts that have come up with recently. This is maybe just like a little bit of just tips and tricks that you can keep in mind when you want to create some visualizations. Usually when you're comparing, you use a bar chart, bubble chart, pie, tree map, word cloud, sort of these sort of charts. When you want to organize your data, you use maybe Venn diagrams, pyramids, ordered bar charts, something like that. When you want to indicate change, maybe growth in users, growth in revenue, growth in impressions, growth in followers, use maybe line chart, area chart, map if it's geographical data, like increase in pollution, for example. If you want to show relationships between two data, for example, with the earlier data set that we were working with, if you want to show relationship between Instagram and Facebook, you can use a multi-series chart, which is like a bar and line, a column and line chart combined, or you could use a histogram, or you could use a scatter plot. These are just, honestly, to be very honest, as someone who's worked in data analytics before, there's no right answer. It really depends on how you want to visualize the data and how you want to present it. There are some standards that people use, and this is sort of the standards that people would like to use. But as such, no, it's not like it's a wrong if I use bar chart to show change. It's not really wrong. It's just not standard, and it would look weird on a presentation. But other than that, it really depends on how you would like to visualize your data, right? Just another way of just looking at what we saw in the earlier slide. I'm not really sure which sort of visualization works better for you, so I just put in both. So I just like all of you to interact with this question based on what you've read over, based on what you sort of went through over here. I think, Pratik, if you could make the poll live. So we're trying to do these comparisons largely today. So what chart probably would you use to make these comparisons, right? So you have these 6 charts over here. What chart would you use to make these comparisons? And this is based on your personal choice. There's no right or wrong answer for this. I'm more curious to know where your thinking lies. I would really like if somebody comes off mute and tells me why they picked that option. So I can see a couple of responses over here. About half of the people say they would like to use option 3, which is sorry, I'm just trying to move my chat window, which is a column chart, right? Yeah. So column chart, a lot of you picked column chart. A couple of you picked a bar chart or a line chart. That's quite interesting. No one seems to have picked anything else. This is also interesting. Would anyone like to just validate their answer very quickly? Sorry, can't unmute, but I think option 3 is easier to comprehend. Thanks, Bhumika. So more of a mental comprehension. So option 3 is easier to comprehend. Yeah. Okay. So I would like to take up more of your time. I just want to cover one last thing before we open it up to questions. Since a lot of you did not get the pre-work, what I can do is just send the webinar attendees this slide with the same data set. Maybe you'd like to engage with it and send me your attempts of it. I will take time to offer personal feedback for anybody who's sending me their sheets with their attempts. And I'm happy to engage over email for further conversations. If you have any doubts that you'd like to solve, if you're not able to understand something, I'd definitely help you out. If you're interested, I'll send this as a post email with this same data set with a different set of questions. You can engage in them and just practice Excel, get better at it, get better at your visualization, and just hopefully start your budding data analyst careers at this point. Before just something to keep in mind before you start working on this sheet. Just make sure you look at naming, references, validity of records, incorrect data, corrupt data, blanks, anything that seems wrong, and just sort of correct all that data and then start working on it. Because if you start sort of just do it straight away, then you might not get the result you were expecting because of some random error in the data. So it's good practice to just clean up your data first before you start working on it. That would be step one with anything. Just look through your data, identify some corrupt data, identify some blanks, identify some spelling errors, some inconsistencies, etc. before you just sort of start analyzing. Just make sure all your columns have titles, all of them have indexing. If they've already come with some filtering or sorting, just make sure you clear all of that and start from scratch, right? That's just a tip. So that's largely where I would like to end this workshop for today. I'd like to just keep this open for another 5 minutes. If any of you have any questions that you'd like to ask me based on what we did today, based on data analytics, based on Excel, based on anything that comes to your mind, while you fill up the feedback form, Pratik, if you could help me out with sharing the feedback form with the audience. Thank you so much. So I'll just keep the room open. If anybody has any questions that you'd like to post on chat, I'm happy to answer them. Yeah, that's any questions on Excel, any questions on data analytics, any questions on tools that you might need for data analytics, where to get started, what sort of skills you might need. Do you have to be good at maths? Do you have to be good in Excel? Do you have to be good in... Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me just fix that for you. Just give me 1 minute. I'm just going to fix that for you. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to fix that for you, but you can post your questions on chat by then, and I'll just answer them as I'm fixing it. This is a 10-day webinar. Not really, Sagar, but I'm not sure why you would have that question. This is actually just an introduction to data analytics. If you would like to get a much more deeper insight into Excel or something, this is some you could engage with Skillaroo as a platform, and this is something that we offer within the platform. You could do various projects, and we offer you feedback on your attempt so you can get better in your skills. But this is not a 10-day webinar on its own. There are other webinars though that Skillaroo offers. The feedback should work now. I've sort of changed the permissions. So the feed permission settings, so that should work. Anybody with any other questions for the day? Just wanted to ask, what if the field is relatively really competitive as of now? Bhumika, I would say data analytics is not a field, but more of a skill set, right? Like, for example, you could be a product manager, or you could be a digital marketer who just knows data analytics. Of course, data analytics have bigger teams and companies, but if you ask me what I would want to do with my career, I would want to pick up data analytics as a skill set and then use that in various fields in whatever I work, right? So it just expands my horizon of what I could be possible if I pick it up as a skill instead of a career. But the field is competitive in the sense that data is so important in today's world that you just need to know data analytics, whether you take it up as a career or you take it up as a skill set. It's a very widely competitive field, And it requires probably a lot of, it really depends on what sort of data analytics you're looking at. How much data analysis is necessary for machine learning? Maybe a fair bit. I wouldn't say it would be a lot of your job, because at the end of the day, for machine learning, you're looking at recognizing patterns, and you're looking at eventually just the machine sort of picking up on those patterns. So you definitely need a fair bit of data analysis, but I wouldn't say it's a lot. Bhumika, to answer your question, it is really competitive. It is really in demand. And if you pick it up as a skill set, I think it just widens your horizons in your career path. Any other questions? Data analysis is a part of data science. Sagar, good question. So what we do as data analysis probably classifies also as business analytics, where you're looking at KPIs from a business. Data science, I think, focuses more on generation of data in terms of databases, maintaining your servers, maintaining all that. So a data scientist is not somebody who would do data analytics, if that answers your question. Data analytics is largely done by like an analyst or a business analyst. You don't need to know, for example, a lot of Python or R, or I mean, you need to know R and you probably need to know Python, but not to a level of what a data scientist needs to know, who probably needs to know modeling of data, regression, statistics, and all these a lot more. And that would come under data science. Data analysis is more of a universal term. It comes under every field. Any questions related to tools or skill sets? Okay, any questions related to today's webinar? Maybe was it useful to you? Was it relevant? Was it not relevant? Was it too fast? Were you not able to follow through? Although I'll be able to read your feedback, I just want to get some, basic insights. Okay. If no one, hey, thanks, Vasi. If you learned Excel a bit, I'm really happy. I hope you can engage with the post work that we'll send out. It'll really help you, I promise you. Bhumika, thanks. Okay. It was really fun enjoying with all of you. I really hope, will you explain the scope for mechanical students? Ganesh, that's a very for data scope for mechanical students for data science. I registered on Skillaroo. Sagar, that's lovely. Thank you so much. Ganesh, very generalist question. Are you asking me, would I require data science as a mechanical student, or as a mechanical student, can I move into data science? If it's the latter, then definitely. There is no, what do I say? There is no barrier for you to sort of move into data science. You can be anybody and move into data science. You just need to sort of learn a bit of basics, learn a bit of maths. Like I said, data science is different from data analytics. If you want to move into data science, you just need to know a bit of maths, and you need to be really strong with statistics and regression and modeling of numbers. If you get that right, whether you're a commerce student, law, doctor, whoever you are, you can get into data science. Scope for data science is huge. Everybody works on data. Any company you want to get into, anywhere, including, like your Haldirams, including your lowest, maybe mid-tier brand to your most fancy brand works with data. What is MongoDB? MongoDB is type of a database that sort of works with storing data. Companies use this to store their data, and then you can sort of query it out from them and do your analysis. It's just a type of sort of database or a, yeah, I'd just like to put it that and not confuse you with more information at the end of this call. So it's just a type of database. Okay, I guess if you have no further questions, I'd just end the call here. Though, like I said, I will send out this post-work email, and if you want to engage with me further, you can always reach out to me on my email when I send it out to you. I'd be happy to engage with you and answer further questions for all of you. Thank you all of you for engaging on today's call. I hope you had fun. See you on emails, hopefully.